across the continent of Africa and also globally, and that we've been also paying attention to throughout this week. And also we shall bring you up to date with the latest news from across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and it is good to have you on board this morning. Before I bring in the rest of the panelists, let me just bring us up to date with the headlines today. The Standard newspaper, bad day for Uhuru man, as he's told the international limelight for brokering Ethiopia Tigray peace deal. Some Kenyatta administration's men were having a traffic in Nairobi from David Murathe, who appeared before EACC to Fred Matiang'i, whose name was dropped in court. In Mombasa, DP Gachagua was vowing to review all port deals, while at Kenyatta University, an administrator banished by his regime bounced back. That story is on page 4, 6, 7, and 8 on the Standard newspaper. Blow to Orange Party as Ongera decamp. The story is on page 14. Eldoret ripe for City Stadium. That is on the county's page on page 21. Family split over organ donation. That is on page 3. The Star newspaper, Raymond Omolo is Ruto's new power man from humble beginnings in Homa Bay. Interior PS Omolo, like his boss, is testimony all dreams are valid. You'll find that on page 4 and 5. And then President Ruto thwarted plans to grab port, says DP Gachagua. That story is on page 6. Kenyan women narrate tales of horror in Saudi Arabia. You'll find that on page 8, 9, and 10 on the Star. The Daily Nation. We are under pressure to frame Kinoti. Okay. We are under pressure to frame Kinoti, 9 officers of the disbanded Special Service Unit accused of killing 2 Indians and their taxi driver tell court the arrest is politically instigated to settle scores and that they are being pushed to implicate former Director of Criminal Investigations George Kinoti in exchange for their freedom. That story is on page 2 and 3 on the Daily Nation. Murathe in trouble over Jirongo's cash. You'll find that in there. Very well, let's just look at some of the other headlines from across the continent of Africa, and we start with the one from Zimbabwe. The Herald. U.S. President exposes puppets in Zimbabwe, and then deserving investors to get citizenship. The Daily News as well from Zimbabwe. ZEC mulls over peace summit, and then The Guardian from Tanzania. China, Tanzania agree on strategic linkages, summit diplomacy focus. Okay, and The Citizen also from Tanzania. No loans for 48% of university entrants. Tanzania and China signed 15 bilateral cooperation pacts. The Nation from Nigeria, Atiku, a farm in Rao over 5.9 million visa bill payment. The Guardian also from Nigeria. After Emirates, more airlines to quit, over 500 million US dollars trapped funds. A new vision from Uganda. Government issues new rules from PDM loans. The Daily Monitor also from Uganda. We can defeat M23 in 24 hours, says the army, I think in Uganda. And then I think that is what we have from across the continent of Africa this morning. So perhaps before I continue with the rest of the news from across the continent in details, I'd like to bring in Dr. David Matanga, who shall be joining us. Doc, if you can hear me, good morning. Doc, can you hear me? Good morning. Okay. Samuel.
Good morning, Miriam. Good morning. Thank you very much. It is still a bit shaky, and I have not been able to stabilize my network to show. But good morning, all of you. Good morning, Tawish. But you can hear my voice, nevertheless. Can I go ahead and look at the morning news from this side?
Go ahead, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I don't have much. This news, it looks like my station has not, it doesn't have any news that were sent to me. I don't know why. Yeah, I can see. Oh, this one. Yes, yes. The Guardian newspaper of today failed at every stage. Family anger at arena bombs response. You know, they tried to bomb the arena in United Kingdom, but the police and the other departments were blamed by the families. That is on the Guardian. Metro, which is a free paper given, this will hurt. And it has a picture of let down by emergency response, the lady who was killed, and bank warns of longest recession ever. And it is Chester Arena's inquiry. A commission of inquiry has been set up on how she died, how the response emergency. Miriam, you can imagine that if an ambulance does not come in time in the UK, the minister resigns. One ambulance, if it doesn't come on time, or the fire brigade, or the police minister resigns, and somebody dies because the ambulance did not turn up in time. These are some of the challenges that I don't know Africa we have to struggle to reach where we are supposed to reach. That's the Metro paper. This lady died of a bomb negligence. The ambulance didn't turn up in time. There were no doctors on the scene. And therefore, the owner of the arena was taken to jail, and the minister resigned. That's the Metro. The Telegraph said, Hunt set to launch capital gain raid. The minister of the Chancellor of the Exchequer of Britain, who is the CS for Treasury in the United Kingdom's CS, in Kenya CS for Treasury, is going to raid on capital gains of the people, worsening them already worsened position. And I don't know what in Kenya, there are some people who are going to be raided, whose accounts will be raided in order to to pay taxes and so on and so forth. So in Britain, it is a similar thing here. Trump to run for presidency. Oh my God. Oh, Jesus Christ. He's coming back. So, Miriam, he is coming back. Why? And guess what? He could win. He could win the presidency. He's coming back. He was trounced in the first. He has another chance to win. He could win. And at this time, I think he might be very radical. Okay, that is the Telegraph. And then we have the Star newspaper. These ones are the things that we can't write. We can't talk on the African TV because of the type of language which can only be used in Britain. Because our television crosses across the continents. We respect the culture and respect the freedoms of the people of those countries. The Sun newspaper said HMS WAG set sail. The ship of Her Majesty's is saying, and but not 3 lions on the ship. The ship used to have 3 lions, but now there are no 3 lions because it's the king. Her Majesty, the Queen logos and identification were lions. They are not there now. And the other last paper from United Kingdom is the Mirror. The Arena bomb, 999, this is now the police. The police failed to rescue this lady, and he died. So the ministers, some of them resigned, and there is an inquiry to even lock more people, those telephone operators who delayed to pass on the message, why the ambulance was not there in time, why the police did not reach in time. So that is what we have from this side of the world. Thank you very much. Back to you in the studio in Nairobi. I'm Dr. Matanga from London. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So before I bring in Samuel Tawish, a very good morning to you. I see you've joined us as well.
Very good morning to you, Miriam Ogutu from Communication Headquarters. Good morning to Dr. David Masanga, and also our viewers who are watching this program in Kenya here, Africa, and the rest of the world. Indeed, my great pleasure to join you on this program. Good morning, Miriam.
Good morning to you. So let me just bring us up to date with the detailed news, and then we shall know where to pick and what we will base our conversation in this morning. We start with something that happened in French Parliament, and it suspended its session on Thursday after a far-right member of Parliament shouted they should go back to Africa as a black member spoke on immigration. De Faunas, a member of the National Rally, later apologized and said his remark had not been aimed at Carlos Martin Bilongo himself, but at migrants trying to reach Europe by sea. But Mr. Bilongo, who was born in France, condemned the remarks as shameful. The Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne said there was no room for racism in France. And then we go to Ethiopia. Oromo Liberation Army rebels who are fighting Ethiopian federal government forces kidnapped an unknown number of officials from the western town of Mendi earlier this week, according to a local official and residents of the town, which is located more than 500 kilometers from the capital Addis Ababa, told the media that the rebels seized control of Mendi after intense fighting. At least 3 banks were reportedly robbed and government offices ransacked, according to residents who spoke on a condition of anonymity. A rebel commander confirmed they had kidnapped local officials but did not say how many. The OLA, which had made an alliance with the Northern Tigrayan forces that had just signed a truce with the government, have been accused of targeting local officials and minorities in the restive region of Oromia, which they always deny. A banknote issued by the Central Bank of Algeria has caused a stir in the French media and angered politicians in France. The 2,000 dinar banknote was issued to commemorate the Arab League summit held in Algeria on the 1st and 2nd November. But the problem for the French is that it features the amount written in Arabic and English. This all comes amid concerns that English is being preferred in Algeria over French. In July, Algeria's President Abdelmajid Tebboune announced that the former French colony would start teaching English in addition to French in primary schools. Although France has not been in Algeria banknotes since 1964, the use of English was seen by many French politicians and commentators as a disregard of their language. And then the UK has agreed to open negotiations with Mauritius over the future of the Chagos Islands, a British territory in the Indian Ocean since 1814. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said he wanted to resolve all outstanding issues over the archipelago. The effective operation of the joint UK-US military base on Diego Garcia would be guaranteed, he added. Chagosians have campaigned to return since 1,000 people have forced to leave the 1960s and 1970s. And Mauritius, which won independence from the UK in 1968, maintains the islands are its own, and Chagosians have fought for their return in the British courts. The United Nations highest court, the International Court of Justice in Hague, ruled that the UK's administration of the territory is unlawful and must end. But until now, the UK has resisted international pressure to begin talks about the islands. Over 1 million people have been affected by flooding caused by torrential rains across South Sudan. The UN Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has confirmed. OCHA said the ongoing flood response by its aid partners was being hampered by renewed violence, insecurity, and inaccessibility due to impassable roads. We go to Guinea, and Guinea's ruling junta is calling for the prosecution of former President Alpha Conde, whom it overthrew in a coup in 2021. The ruling junta is also calling for the prosecution of some 180 senior officials and former ministers for alleged corruption. The military, which took power more than a year ago, has made the fight against corruption one of its major proclaimed battles, and many former officials have already been detained in this context. In a total, the Minister of Justice, Alphonse Charles Wright, gave a list of 188 names, some of which are already in prison and others cited several times. Their accounts are frozen, the document that he presented added. And then we go to Senegal, and Senegalese main opposition leader and presidential candidate Ousmane Sonko has claimed his innocence as he made his first court appearance in Dakar on Thursday to respond to accusations of rape. The 48-year-old politician, who came third in the last presidential election, plans to run again in 2024, has been accused of raping an employee of a beauty salon where he was getting a massage. Sonko tweeted after a 3-hour hearing that he believed it had gone very well. And of course, he's saying that this is a state conspiracy, a claim he has repeatedly made that these charges should be dropped. Nigeria's currency, the naira, has dropped to a record low against the US dollar as Nigerians scramble to buy US currency ahead of a redesign of naira notes. Nigerian authorities say replacing the notes will reduce inflation, combat counterfeiting, and bring more money into the circulation. But security and economic experts warn the move could damage Nigeria's economy. It's been just over a week since the Central Bank of Nigeria announced its plan to redesign the country's highest paper denomination, 200, 500, and 1,000 naira notes. The new naira notes will begin circulating in mid-December. The old notes will cease to be legal tender by the end of January. That is according to the Central Bank of Nigeria. The central bank says the move will put more money in circulation. Currently, an estimated 85% of all money in Nigeria is stashed away in homes outside the banking system. And Cameroonian's government and its supporters are holding an event this week ahead of celebrations on Sunday marking President Paul Biya's 40 years in power. Meanwhile, opposition parties are holding rallies calling for the 89-year-old Paul Biya, the world's oldest head of state, to change what they say are unfair election rules. Biya's Cameroon's People's Democratic Movement said it dispatched party officials to towns and villages to organize conferences and mobilize more support for the 89-year-old leader, who it said has achieved a lot for the country. However, opposition political parties accused Biya of rigging elections for decades and wanting to stay in power until he dies. The Cameroon Renaissance movement, led by Maurice Kamto, says Kamto won the October 2018 presidential elections and that the victory was stolen from him. Another party, the Social Democrat Front, has joined the CRM in asking civilians not to attend anniversary celebrations to protest Biya's long stay in power. Biya's supporters are calling on the octogenarian to run for president again in 2025, while the opposition is asking him to hand over power to a younger leader. On July 30th, during a visit to Cameroon by French President Emmanuel Macron, Biya said he still has time to decide if he will run again. And almost 8 million people in South Sudan, or 2/3 of the troubled country's population, are at a risk of hunger, according to a report published on Thursday by the United Nations. The Food and Agriculture Organization, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, and the World Food Programme blame the situation on a combination of conflict, poor microeconomic conditions, and extreme climate events. The UN said the proportion of people facing high levels of food insecurity and malnutrition is at the highest level ever, even surpassing levels seen during the conflict in 2013 and 2016. And we end with some news from around the world, where regional and world leaders have hailed the peace agreement between Ethiopia's government and Tigray rebels signed on Wednesday, raising hopes for millions of people displaced by nearly 2 years of deadly war. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo, the African Union mediator, said the agreement marked a new dawn for Ethiopia. The war, which broke out in November 2020, has pitted regional forces from Tigray against Ethiopia's federal army and its allies, which include forces from other regions and neighboring Eritrea. It has killed thousands of people, displaced millions from their homes, and left hundreds of thousands on the brink of a famine. And that is the latest news. You are now up to date, and a very good morning to you. So now we can kickstart our conversation. And maybe we start with the news from Cameroon, Doc. I don't know if he's
Miriam.
Yes.
Miriam and Tawish and our listeners.
Yes.
It is very sad that in Africa we seem to have been bewitched. Mr. Paul Biya cannot even walk. Mr. Paul Biya cannot eat, is eating through pipes. No, and he doesn't even stay in Cameroon. You know, some of these things pain a lot. He flies in Cameroon and he stays in a hotel near the airport in Switzerland. That's where he's administering a state called Cameroon. And when you hear someone saying he's calling upon him to stand for an election to be nominated as the presidential candidate again, then you don't know whether Africa, why we have rain, we have a good weather, but we beg food. Have you ever told me something like that? We have everything. We can't even plant. We can't even get the solar panels and distribute them. So if we can't do that, how can we not call a man who is walking on stretchers, on a stretcher? He was brought from Cameroon on a medical plane from Switzerland to come and open the African Cup of Nations. Miriam, is a tragedy. Africa needs to wake up. Let me finish my things that I feel they have touched me so that I can run.
Go ahead.
In a plane. Sorry, I run in a train. Two, the peace process of Ethiopia, Tigray. Miriam, I didn't know until last night when I hosted. That's why I'm not able to talk. I am not able. I did not even have sleep until this morning of your Kenyan time at about 4, which was about 1 o'clock of London time. I hosted a 900 platform of people on Tigray and Ethiopia. But the amount of pain and anger and hatred of ethnicity on this platform shows to you how bad Ethiopia is. We look at Ethiopia from outside. I thought ethnicity was worse in Kenya or Uganda. But when I looked at Ethiopia's ethnicity and its problems and the political strife they have, Miriam, I think we are far better than what it is there. There, the Oromo don't want to hear about Amhara. The Amhara don't want to hear about Tigray. The Tigray don't want to hear about some parts of Oromo. The Somalis don't want to hear. And those are the ones they don't want to hear at all. Then you have the Afra, they don't want to hear anything. So when I discovered this, I wrote a piece. I said, where on earth a country that is so nice outside, but inside, ethnicity has torn it to pieces. I hope this agreement, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the former president of Kenya, the former president of Nigeria, the former deputy president of South Africa, for having been able, using their tactics, to have a cessation of hostility agreement in place. This is one thing that has made this week a good week where you can smile, that at least medicine, water, shelter, food, and other essential commodities will reach the people of Tigray who have been under siege for the last 2 years. At least we shall have medical doctors, engineers, everybody going in to construct. At least we shall have communication restored, people talking to their relatives who have been either displaced or they think they are dead. At least there will be banking, transfer of money. People have been doing without money. That is how the plight of the people of Tigray has been. So this agreement will allow the President Kenyatta, former President Kenyatta, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and the former Deputy President of South Africa for having concluded this agreement. Thank you. God bless them. Another thing that has shocked me is I have seen in the newspaper this morning that they have demoted Mr. Maffeu of the Nation as a managing editor back to be attached to sports. That's very good breaking news for me from Daily Nation. This morning, I don't know whether because of the articles, that is the Kenyan situation. He writes very good articles, and that is very good. Another thing that is very important is the Ebola. The Ebola seems to be slowly, Miriam. Is it gaining ground? Is it beating us yet? Are we ever prepared in Africa? This Ebola has been around for many years, but up to now we seem not to have been prepared. We don't have even the medicine for Ebola. We're just doing trials. I heard in Uganda someone was saying they are doing trials on the medicine. Why do we do trials when are people going to wait on trials, or do we have the medicine to inject the people to save them? Medium, that is the seriousness of some of the things that create chaos in most of the countries in Africa. We are never prepared. We are reactive. We are never proactive. We always lose the meaning of a proactive situation where a country in Europe has spared its food for 200 years, but for us, we keep on looking for food every year. Across Africa, the entire Horn of Africa, even Africa, places where you never expected the hunger to be striking, it is striking as we speak. So these are some things that have touched me. And the other last thing that has touched me is this week, the good gesture by Kenya to send troops into DRC Congo. I welcome that decision, and I pray that there will be quite a lot of success. There will be quite a lot of access to the real people suffering. Refugees will be looked after, and then to repulse these rebels or to wipe them out so that they can go wherever they want to go. And then Congo can stabilize. I thank Kenya for doing so, and I pass my regards to the soldiers who have gone. Anybody, anywhere, helping anywhere in Africa is my friend. Miriam, with those few remarks, I stand down, I land the mic, as it is now commonly said, and I might come back if there is something also paining me, or I have had something sweet coming up, I will come back. But the next other thing is COP27, which is going to take place in Egypt, amid clouds of uncertainty. Several heads of state from Africa are jetting in this weekend to El Shamarek, a resort, Egyptian resort near the Sinai Desert, a territory that recovered from Israel after 1967 war. This El Shamarek is a good place if you wanted a holiday in the world. It is a very good place. But one of the things that, are we going there to ask, will they give us the money, or we are going to have a show? Just a show of might. As Africans, we have arrived. Shall we come back with the 100 billion that they promised? That is my worry. And I land my mic. I wish you a good Friday. I wish you a successful weekend. And I will join you from London on Sunday to broadcast the African news. God bless you. God bless Africa. Keep it going. That is the norm of the day. Thank you. Thank you, Tawish. God bless.
Very well. Thank you for that. So, Tawish, yes, some of the stories, I'd like to get your thoughts on where Doctor started from, and I think where ended the bulletin, and that is of the government. Cameroon's government is planning a week-long celebrations to celebrate President Paul Biya, who is marking this month. In November, he's marking 40 years in power, and of course his supporters are saying he still can do it. He does not have to go anywhere, and so they're hoping that he will stand again to run in 2025.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for this opportunity, and thank you, Dr. Masanga, for the submission you've made. Miriam, what I want to say about Cameroon is not any far from what Dr. Masanga has already submitted, because you and I, and of course Dr. Masanga, and most of the panelists on Bachelor Africa TV understand it too well about Cameroon, and more so the leadership of President Paul Biya. And in terms of what he has not been able to do for the people of Cameroon. And I think, Miriam, when you talk about celebrations of 40 or so years in power, to me, I think I view this as more of ridicule and mockery to a people or a nation that are seeing the worst leadership of President Paul Biya. And instead of the people of Cameroon and its leadership really thinking about how they are going to address, for example, the issue of the Amazonians, of course, that remains one of the major things that affects that particular country. President Paul Biya and his regime have not given an opportunity to listen unto the issues of the people of Amazonia. And in itself, to me, therefore, the celebration pass as a ridicule and a mockery to our people who continue to struggle, to our people who continue to pursue democracy, to our people who continue to pursue freedom in their own nation. Because President Paul Biya does not give an ear, or even appears to be blind to the issues that are being raised, or grievances that are being raised by a majority of the people, especially from the southern part of Cameroon. And to me, therefore, it's not that I'm not wishing him well in terms of his health, but again, when it comes to leadership, and also I've heard Dr. Masanga alluding to the fact that he could as well be preparing again to go for the very seat for the very seat in the coming election, and it leaves one wondering really, even with the deteriorating health of President Paul Biya, how can he even imagine to want to continue to be in power instead of thinking of how he can be able to pass on the baton to another generation or to a fresh leadership, so that maybe through the fresh leadership we can be able to see new changes, we can be able to see a new dawn in Cameroon. There's not so much to celebrate about President Paul Biya during his reign in power. And I think maybe it is about more of the cronies, it's more of these political allies, and maybe those who are serving in his administration who perhaps feel they have benefited in one way or another. But for some of us who are observers out here, some of us who are analysts, those of us who are viewing what has been happening in Amazonia, especially during the reign of President Paul Biya, I can clearly say, Miriam, there's not so much to take home, there's not so much to celebrate about the leadership of President Paul Biya. I submit, Miriam.
Thank you so much. And of course, the elections usually go for one term is about 7 years. So the last elections were held in 2018. We saw what happened after that. I think even the official leader of the official opposition party, Maurice Kamto, was jailed for a while, and then he was released. And should he run again in 2025, as his supporters are egging him on to do, then he will be about 92, because right now he is 89. I mean, when does it stop? Even for him. When does it stop, really?
Miriam, you remember we've had these discussions about why most African leaders are reluctant really to exit power, because one, there's that fear of, for example, being a fear of witch hunt by maybe those who take over from them or from the new administrations. And it becomes more unlikely that sitting presidents, given an opportunity, will really want voluntarily to hand over power to another leader, as long as they would want, as long as they are alive. And that's why you see today in the African continent, we have a majority of presidents who have outstayed in power, and they will wish to continue maybe until they die on that seat. I think your guess is as good as mine. One, I think there's a fear of maybe what these leaders have been able to do during their tenure, and there's a fear that maybe some of these things might come back to haunt them if a new leadership takes over. And I see, for example, what happened in Kenya. I mean, we've had very smooth transitions in this country. I do not want to revisit, but we all understand. Look onto the case of President Uhuru Kenyatta, who just left office a couple of months ago. And I mean, he did so because, one, he's respected the Constitution of Kenya. He just served his 2 terms in office, and he has not had any attempt to want to mutilate the Constitution or even change to extend his tenure in power. And I think Kenya is setting a very good example. You cannot say the same for some of the African leaders today. Equatorial Guinea, go to Uganda, talk of Cameroon today. I mean, the examples are lofty, Miriam. You cannot quite exhaust in the African continent today. And I really really look forward for that time when the African leaders will find the essence and the meaning of serving their term and exiting office and allowing fresh blood or new leadership to take over, and not be there, try to mutilate constitution or change to suit their own interests. And at the same time, try to pass it as though it is the ordinary people or their supporters who want them to continue being in power. Take, for example, what is happening in Cameroon, and you've just mentioned that the supporters of President Paul Biya are the ones who are even pushing him to contest for the seat again come 2025. I don't believe so. I think they're just using these as supporters and allies as scapegoats. These are things that originate and end with President Paul Biya or these leaders themselves, although now they have to circumvent and say it is the people who want them to continue being in power. I do not believe that a leader has to be there for eternity in terms of leadership or being in power. What defines a good leader is one who nurtures fresh leadership and allows and passes on the baton to another generation to be able to lead. But those who stick in onto power, like is the case today, Miriam, I really do not think that there's more they can add. More than 40 years in power, that there's a new thing that they can be able to do or inject in terms of the leadership.
All right, and so Paul Biya, you know, the country will be celebrating for a whole week. They'll be celebrating him being there for 40 years. You've mentioned the Equatorial Guinea president, who is the longest serving president in Africa. I think the country is going for an election this month. It's just a formality. He's expected to win. And so nothing much to report there. So we'll just move on to another news that really caught my attention. And Nigeria is planning to redesign its Naira notes. Nigerian authority says replacing the notes will reduce inflation, combat counterfeiting, and bring more money into circulation. But security and economic experts warn the move could damage Nigeria's economy. I think they're doing what we did with our notes here. Remember when we had to redesign because of certain issues, and the same reasons I think that they're giving here. So they're planning to redesign their notes because a lot of people have money stashed in their homes, like it was thought even here. And also, I think Nigeria is gearing up for its elections. We saw the timing of when our notes were redesigned, but I think we did it for different reasons. I don't know. Is this the way to fight corruption in African countries when people have stashed and money laundered and washed and all these things? So the government now is forced to redesign new notes to curb inflation and things like that.
Well, Miriam, it is just like you've said, one approach to attempt to fight corruption, although in my own view, it is one which is very desperate and may not, by the end of the day, be able to achieve the desired results. I think it is also not good or wise for people to stash money in their homes or to actually, instead of allowing this money to circulate. Miriam, they say the beauty of money is in its circulation. So if you have money and you've just stashed it somewhere, it's not actually in use in terms of circulating. Then you're going to stagnate the economy, and that money will not be able even to multiply. So I think it is one of those very desperate measures that the government in Nigeria is putting into place to see into it how they can be able to deal, for instance, with people who have, say, cobbled a lot of money, maybe from the public coffers, and they intend to use it maybe during these coming campaigns and elections in Nigeria. But I also want to hope that the move is genuine and seeks to restore sanity when it comes to of course, the use and circulation of money, and of course the fight against corruption, and not necessarily maybe witch hunt or targeting individuals, more so maybe those in the opposition, so that they are starved of the necessary resources that they need really to mount a very serious campaign against President Buhari, if at all he will be contesting again in this coming election. I believe, Miriam, that doesn't really come to us as a surprise that President Buhari could be seeking yet another term in office during this.
He's not seeking another, because I think Nigeria's constitution is very clear. 2 terms, you're gone, 4 year each term. So he's almost done with his 8 years. Yeah, so he's not contesting again.
That in itself really is a pleasant surprise to me and good news, because and that is why sometimes these constitutions also help us to guide and limit the excesses of these individuals with the insatiable appetite for power, those who do not want to leave power. And I think that's where the constitutions really come in handy, and those who believe in it. Because again, you can also have this constitution and the dictates of it where leaders decide to disregard it altogether. And I think it's good that President Buhari will not be seeking another chance to serve, because by virtue of the dictates of the constitution. And I think that should be the norm generally in the continent of Africa, so that once you're able to serve your term as enshrined or dictated by the constitution, you allow the new leadership really to take over. And I think that is very, very good news. But Miriam, back to the issue of you're saying the redesigning, of course, redesigning the is it the money in Nigeria?
The notes, the 200,
currency,
500,
that is, I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing, because apart from fighting corruption and all manner of things, it also brings a new look altogether. It brings it injects some freshness in terms of course, the currency in Nigeria. So we need to look into it from those perspectives. And I want to hope that this does not target individuals, especially those from the opposition, in as far as the coming election is concerned in Nigeria.
Okay, all right, very well. Now, it's been just a week since the Central Bank of Nigeria announced its plan to redesign the country's highest paper denominations, that is in 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes. And the central bank says the move will put more money in circulation. Currently, an estimated 85% of all money 85%, Tawish, of all money in Nigeria is stashed away at home and outside the banking system. And the new notes are meant to be in circulation in mid-December. This is a crisis. 85% of the money is not in the official banking system. 85%.
That's a very big percentage, Miriam, but I can understand why such a percentage really the money is being stashed in homes or maybe outside the country. That only points to the fact that maybe most of these monies and the sources are a suspect, and that is why these individuals or institutions that are stashing this money will not want it to be say in recognized institutions, say for example, like in the banks or even in the circles or even in the forex bureaus, because they know maybe through such channels, government will be able to rein on them. Government will be able to know and ask how you are able really to get all that money. And I think that is the reason why we are having most of these people really stashing their money either at home or even banking it outside Nigeria. But again, they are killing the economy in Nigeria. It is high time they get to understand that that money must come back to Nigeria and to get it into circulation so that the economy can also be able to improve. Because Miriam, when you starve off circulation of money, it becomes very challenging even to do business. I mean, we've talked about inflation, we've talked about the high cost of living and such kind of things. And I think when such kind of things happen, some of the factors that really lead to inflation and high cost of living. So it is important that these monies get back to the country as soon as possible so that it can be able to inject grow the economy in Nigeria in a nutshell, Miriam.
Mm-hmm. Very well, thank you so much. 85% of the money not being in conventional banking systems cannot be accounted for. I think that's a lot, and perhaps the Central Bank of Nigeria has a reason really to go ahead and have these monies redesigned so that people can carry their stash or their loot or whatever and take it to the bank and get the new notes. I'm just reminded of how that played out here, but ours was not that much out of the banking system. But anyway, let's move on to another country that is also having some issues with its legal tender. The banknote issued by the Central Bank of Algeria has caused a stir in the French media, that is in France. So Algeria does what it feels it needs to do with its money, but France has a problem with that. Let me explain. This angered politicians in France. The 2,000 dinar banknote, they launched a new banknote that is equivalent to 14 US dollars, was issued to commemorate the Arab League. Remember, Algeria was holding the Arab League summit between the 1st and the 2nd. And so to commemorate this very important event, Algeria decided to launch its 2,000 dinar banknote that is equivalent to 14 US dollars. But the problem for the French is that it features the features in the amount is written in Arabic and English. This all comes amid concerns that English is being preferred over French in Algeria. In July, Algeria's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune announced the former French colony would start teaching English in addition to French in primary schools. Although French has not been on Algeria's banknotes since 1964, the use of English was seen by many French politicians and commentators as a disregard of their language. And the politicians in France are not very happy that Algeria has made this move. I don't know how you feel about this as an African.
Well, Miriam, I think it is funny even to just get to hear that, the French in France are complaining about the features the features on the currency in Algeria. That in itself is very, very funny, because what I understand, Miriam, even in the Kenyan context, is that when it comes to the features on the currency, it is something that is actually anchored even in the constitution, captured in the constitution. The kind of template, the kind of features that the Kenyan people, for instance, would want really being captured or designed in their currency is something that they have agreed on, and is something that is being captured in the Kenyan constitution. And I just want to imagine that the same applies with Algeria as to why France or the French politicians really have an issue with that. Leaves a lot to be desired, because I cannot understand how they come in and why it shouldn't bear. Like you said, is it Arabic and English?
Yeah, it used to be. It used to be just Arabic. It has never bore any writings in French, but now they've decided to have it in part of it in English. Algeria.
I think maybe that is what resonates, and that is what captures the aspirations of the people of Algeria. And it's only prudent that the French get to not only to understand, but also to accept this as reality and the sovereignty of the people of Algeria that they have chosen. That is the best design according to them, and that is how they would want their currency really to look. So to me, it still remains very funny that French is discussing about this, and they are somehow amused that in the new currency features that Algeria has decided to do what it has done. And I think this is just not acceptable for French to continue to want to micromanage even some of the things that do not necessarily need their intervention in terms of just the features of the currency in Algeria, Miriam.
Okay. Now, Algeria gained independence from France in 1962 after 132 years of French colonization. French opposition leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon blamed France's President Emmanuel Macron for the omission of French from the banknote. So they're saying it is Macron's fault. The reason why Algeria decided, what does money, as Tawish has said there, what does Algeria's money has to do with France? France has its own franc and they're using euros. So what if Algeria decides it wants its note written in English, in French, in Arabic, in Swahili, whatever language, that is their business. Where does France feature in? But I think this not new president, Tibon, has been very radical in how, I think they've just had enough of France for some reason. The last 2 years I've been seeing how events have been developing there in Algeria, and they really want to not sever the ties, but they really want to separate themselves and try to just do their things as a country without necessarily anchoring their country and their important issues on France, as the way France, we've seen how it patronizes its former colonies. So even this move is seen as such. So the politicians in France are saying, Emmanuel Macron has failed. I don't know what they expected Emmanuel Macron to do, to go and chaperone how Algeria's notes. Let's just move on. Anyway, Oromo Liberation Army rebels who are fighting Ethiopian federal government forces. So we saw the peace, the deal, and it's being hailed by world leaders. That was brokered, mediation process that was sponsored by the African Union. I think that was a good move, and we've talked about it. But while we were having these conversations for the past couple of days, Tawish, I think we underscored the importance of having everybody on the table. So from the news that I'm reading now the Oromo rebels, Oromo Liberation Army, apparently they from the reports, they ransacked government offices, they kidnapped some Ethiopian government officials and all that. Is this perhaps to register their displeasure of perhaps they were not represented on the table? What do you think this could be? Because on one hand, we're seeing the TPLF and the government, the mediation went on very well. Is it because they felt left out, or why do you think we're having now, just when we thought things, we are on a good footing in Ethiopia, now you hear such news?
Well, Miriam, first and foremost, I think I also want to join Dr. Masanga and the rest of us really in hailing the remarkable progress that the peace initiative in Ethiopia is concerned, and also to laud the mediation team led by none other than President Olusegun Obasanjo and President Uhuru Kenyatta, who have been leading the mediation talks in South Africa. That's a good news. That is a remarkable progress in as far as trying to restore sanity and bring back peace in as far as the conflict in Ethiopia is concerned. Second, Miriam, I think it's also important to underscore the fact that we have always maintained that it is important to bring all and sundry on the table in as far as trying to listen to the grievances of all the parties so that by the end of the day, we are not going to create another war front by through this mediation that we are having, so that there's another faction that feels really left out and which should have been part and parcel of the talks to end the hostility and to have the ceasefire in Ethiopia. But again, Miriam, we all also understand that the main antagonist in as far as the conflict in Ethiopia is concerned has mainly been the people of Tigray region and the government, the main government of Ethiopia. And so I think it was just okay, firstly, to bring the major warring parties on the table as the mediation team really reaches out, rather widens the net in terms of getting to understand all other players, all other stakeholders, and maybe any other region or a people or a community that has any grievances, maybe towards the Tigray region or the Tigray people or even the government of Ethiopia. So it is, we must first of all laud what has happened this far, and also I think with the coming in of the Oromo and a claim, them laying a claim that they have not been part and parcel of this mediation to end the conflict that is really ravaging that part of the continent, should not be to create a stumbling block or obstacles towards a ceasefire and finding a long-lasting peace in Ethiopia. But I hope it is more of giving a solution and them coming onto the table really to give a solution and not to complicate matters in terms of the mediations that are ongoing. So I want to hope they're coming in with clean hands. There's no hidden agenda, that they will want to be incorporated. They want to be part and parcel of the bigger solution to the conflict that we have been witnessing in Ethiopia. But it's good news. We are ending the week on a good note, Miriam, that finally the warring parties, especially the antagonists, have been able to have a sit down and agree on some of the key areas, because these are the same, of course, tenets that are going to ensure that all other peace agreements and all other initiatives that have been in place to end this conflict really are going to have room and an opportunity to be explored to the fullest. So I want to hope that the Oromo and any other team or party that is coming with clean hands and with a clear agenda, just to be part and parcel of the solution, but not to complicate an already well-steered kind of mediation that is bringing kind of white smoke in Ethiopia. Miriam, I submit.
Very well. Another OLA, or Oromo Liberation Army, which had made an alliance with Northern Tigrayan forces that had just signed a truce with the government, have been accused of targeting local officials and minorities in the restive region of Oromia, which they have always denied. So I believe that from these reports, maybe they feel blindsided by that peace deal that TPLF has just signed with the Ethiopian government. But I think we still insist for these peace deals or for these mediation processes to be absolutely successful. Anybody who feels aggrieved and feels like they do have a stake in whatever is going on must be included on the mediation table, so that you have a wholesome mediation process, not a section of people. See now, like in South Sudan, those who were not party to the 2018 revitalized peace agreement, now they now have whatever we were talking about here last time. They have now an organization. They were in the opposition, but now they call themselves the people who are not party to the signing. So you have a section of individuals who are also very important stakeholders. So if they don't feel like they're fully heard or they're part of that process, now we have a very elusive peace in South Sudan. So hopefully the Oromo, I'm not saying how they're doing it is the right way to do, to get their attention by destruction of property and loss of lives. That is unnecessary, but I think they could still reach out. And if they have any grievances, the government should be willing to really hear from everybody there, so that they are able to find a lasting peace there in Ethiopia. I know we've talked about a couple of things that has happened over the weekend, but I'm just wondering what stood out for you during this news, the things that we've been covering the whole of this week.
Miriam, I do not necessarily want to appear repetitive, but to me, what has caught my attention and what has made my week is that news about the signing of an agreement for a ceasefire and to end hostility in as far as the conflict in Ethiopia is concerned. Because Miriam, this has been one of those topics that we have been covering for the last so many days, and I think it has been a major headache to the continent. And when you have, such a remarkable progress being registered, really this is impressive. And I think to me, I'm somehow excited, and I want to hope that the parties to this agreement are going to stick to it, are going to remain genuine, are going to remain sincere and honest to it, and make sure that they do this for the benefit and for the greater interest of the people of Ethiopia. Because by the end of the day, Miriam, just like we have always alluded to, a lack of peace and security in Ethiopia means the same, not only to that country but the rest of the region. And it is in the best interest of the rest of the African nations, really, to see Ethiopia come back from that conflict, and so that they can be able to continue building their nation, they can continue being part and parcel of the greater community of the African continent. We do not want to see such kind of anarchy, hostility, displacement of people, and anything bad that has been associated with the Ethiopian as far as the recent conflict is concerned. So that to me was great news. Secondly, Miriam, I think it's about the issue of DR Congo, that in as much as we'll say not so much has been realized in terms of trying to deal with the M23 rebels, but there's more of renewed commitment coming from the stakeholders and coming from the rest of the region, really in helping the government and the soldiers in DR Congo to try and deal with the M23 rebels. A reason of it being, of course, when President President William Ruto, I beg your pardon, Miriam, of course, flagged off the military personnel who are heading, of course, to DR Congo to help their counterparts really in dealing with that insecurity in DR Congo. In itself is a very great boost, because we need as much soldiers on the ground, in as much as we will also call for more resources and maybe new approaches and strategies in dealing with the M23 rebels, because by the end of the day, this particular operation must be a success story, and I think that is what all of us are looking forward to. Miriam, I submit.
All right, very well. And of course, drought-stricken Kenya has donated a plane loaded with relief supplies to neighboring Somalia. The donation has been met with an uproar on social media, as more than a quarter of Kenyans living in arid and semi-arid areas are facing high levels of food insecurity. This is according to the UN data. The consignment included assorted foods, items, and various assorted drugs, according to a statement by Kenya military. I know that we are in need a lot. Parts of this country, people are starving and famine is just ravaging, and we've seen those images, very disheartening. But we also know that Somalia is in perennial need of our help. Samuel Sawish, and that blast that happened over the weekend, the Somali's president appealed for help, appealed for medical staff, appealed for medicine, appealed for food, and so why are Kenyans mad that we're helping Somalia? Why do you think Kenyans can't wrap their heads around this? Mm-hmm.
Miriam, I think it is the selfish nature of humanity, and that there's nothing really you will say is the reason behind that dislike in terms of Kenyans saying that maybe our government or the Kenyan people giving so much to Somalia, maybe they feel they do not deserve. But I think it's good to help a brother, it's good to help a sister, and more so to a nation that we all understand what it has been going through. This is one of the greatest, once great African country, and we will really want to see them get back to their footing. And the only way is to support them anywhere and everywhere necessary at any given time. And I think that is just the gesture that Kenya is trying to demonstrate. And I think there's no reason absolutely as to why Kenyans will feel infuriated, or they'll feel bad or negative about such kind of gestures by the Kenyan people or government. So I think this is something that we must all be able to embrace. We must be able to accept that any other nation, including Kenya, at one time or the other, may find itself there. I do not want to say that maybe because when you talk about, say, for example, anarchists in nations, uprisings and so many kind of things, I do not want to be a prophet of doom. But again, Miriam, when one of your brother nation or sister nation is in turmoil, in a case of Somalia, then I think it is only important, and it's also wise that we come up and we rise to the occasion and help them where it is necessary. And I think this is one of those gestures, in as much as the people of Somalia cannot come out to speak about, very, very appreciative of such kind of gestures, because it goes a long way in boosting their effort in terms of getting back to their footing, Miriam.
Very well. And sometimes you don't help because you have excess. You help because it is the right thing to do. And I think it is the right thing to do, but we also hope that that kind of help will be extended to the Kenyans who are in dire need of that kind of help. Equatorial Guinea's President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Basongo, who has ruled the West African country for 43 years, he launched his bid for a sixth term on Thursday. Mr. Obiang, who is 80, seized power in 1979 from President Francisco Macias Nguema, who was the leader at independence and whose rule prompted a mass exodus and thousands of deaths. The general elections are scheduled for 20th of this month. The president told a rally that his party had chosen him to run because he is the symbol of peace that reigns in Equatorial Guinea, the AFP news agency has reported. The country has about 425,000 registered voters, not even 500,000. And of course, the population is around 1.4 million people. So, yeah, he's ruled there for 43 years. His son is the deputy president of that country. And now I guess they will continue. And after he dies, or God forbid, then his socialite son, he's a socialite, who happens to be the deputy president of that country, will take over from his father. Interesting times. I mean, stories like this, you only hear them from this continent, Tawish.
And that is Africa for you, Miriam. You shouldn't be surprised.
All right. Very well. Yes, indeed. For me, what stood out for me, I think, the story of President Uhuru Kenyatta, Tawish. That's the problem you've introduced. President Dr. William Ruto flagged off the first contingent of KDF to the Democratic Republic of Congo to help in the peace process. So we are wishing them well, and hopefully they will be safe there. I still am confused on whether it's a good idea or not, but that is not for me to say. I think, the government operates within intelligence reports and things like that. So for them to have sat down and decided this is the right thing to do, I'm sure they considered a number of factors. And so, that is that. And of course, I'm really impressed by Somalia's new government's relentless spirit when it comes to the fight against Al-Shabaab in Somalia. I think President Mahmoud has a will that he's showing. And, after that blast that happened last weekend, we saw him stand up and be a symbol of hope for the people in Somalia. And he went to that spot that the blast had happened, and he said, you know what, we will not be moved. This fight against Al-Shabaab, we shall continue with it, and nobody will deter us from achieving the goal that we are set to have as a country. So I'm encouraged by that relentlessness that I hear every time he speaks. So as we have been saying the whole of this week, the rest of the world needs to back him up, needs to give him the support that he needs, because who knows, this could be the person who will help Somalia be liberated from Al-Shabaab. So I know he's been a president before, but Somalia needs all the support that it can get from all the well-wishers across the world. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Samuel Tawish, for your time. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much. And thank you so much. We'll see you here on Sunday, God willing, for more news from across the continent of Africa. And of course, we shall be paying a special spotlight on COP27 that is said to be starting in Egypt, starting the 6th of this month. So just a day away. And then we will see what Africans stand to gain and what they will be pushing for in this climate change summit. Thank you so much. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you for watching and bye-bye for now.